Welcome to Stoic Philosophy for Life. This is not just a place to listen to books, it's a space to feel them with your soul. Here, we illuminate your mind with timeless lessons. Awaken your inner strength, cultivate self-discipline, and guide your journey of personal growth. Every word is carefully chosen to reach what you're truly seeking: peace, clarity, and lasting transformation. If this feels like the place for you, hit subscribe and walk this path with us every single day. Now, put on your headphones, take a deep breath, and begin the journey of renewing your mind and your life. Have you ever felt like you are stuck in the same loop, wanting to change, promising yourself you will, but somehow always falling short? You set your goals with the best of intentions. You want to wake up early, eat healthier, focus on your work, stop procrastinating. And for a day or two you do. But then, something pulls you back. A craving, a distraction, a voice inside that whispers, "Just this once," and suddenly, you are back where you started, frustrated, guilty, and tired of the cycle. But what if I told you that self-discipline is not some rare trait that only the successful or the naturally strong possess? What if discipline is not about punishing yourself, but about freeing yourself from impulses, distractions, and the chaos of unchecked emotions? In this video, you will learn how to master your self-discipline in just 7 days, not with tricks or hacks, but by reshaping your mindset and aligning your actions with your deeper values. Stay until the end, because what you are about to learn might just be the turning point you have been waiting for. Discipline, as the Stoics taught, is not about rigidity. It is about harmony. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Self-discipline begins where reaction ends. It is in that tiny space between impulse and action where the battle is won. The battle for your morning routine, for your diet, for your time, your focus, and ultimately your future. And make no mistake, every time you choose to act with intention rather than impulse, you are rewriting the story of who you are becoming. Imagine your mind as a wild horse. Left unchecked, it runs wherever it pleases. It gallops toward every desire, every distraction, every excuse. But disciplined is the rider. Not one who beats the horse into obedience, but one who gently, patiently guides it. The first step to self-discipline is not force. It is awareness. Notice where your thoughts go when you are tired, bored, or anxious. That is where the leash needs to be held tighter. In this journey, you do not need motivation. Motivation fades. It is like a matchstick, it burns bright but dies quickly. What you need is a system. A simple, repeatable set of behaviors that align with your values. Think of it like brushing your teeth. You do not wait to feel inspired to do it, you do it because it is what a disciplined person does. You do it because it is part of who you are becoming. So today, day 1, your task is simple. Choose one behavior, just one that reflects the person you want to become. Maybe it is waking up at a specific hour. Maybe it is going for a short walk. Maybe it is writing down what you ate. Do not aim for perfection. Aim for consistency. You are not building a tower in one day. You are laying a single brick carefully, mindfully, intentionally. Remember what Seneca said: "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity. For he is not permitted to prove himself." Every craving you resist, every temptation you say no to, every time you choose focus over distraction, you are proving something powerful. You are showing yourself that you are in control. Day 2 is where most people fall. The excitement of a fresh start begins to fade, and the real challenge reveals itself not in the big things, but in the small, quiet choices. The temptation to sleep in just a little longer. the inner negotiation to postpone it, ask until later. And it is in these seemingly insignificant decisions that discipline is either built or broken. The question is not whether you will face resistance. You will. The question is, who will you be when you do? Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And what lies within your control today? Your focus. Your attitude. The next decision you make. When your emotions try to sway you, when your body craves comfort or ease, remember your identity is being shaped in that very moment. Discipline is not a one-time act of strength. It is 1,000 tiny acts of courage. So here is the mindset shift. Stop waiting to feel like it. Stop expecting the world to give you a perfect environment to thrive. True self-discipline grows in imperfect conditions. It is forged in the noise, the chaos, the discomfort. Think of a seed. It does not wait for ideal soil. It grows through concrete when it has to. And so must you. Today, your task is to define your non-negotiable. Just one thing that no matter what happens, you will complete. It could be 5 minutes of meditation. It could be writing your goals. It could be showing up to your workout, even if you do not feel like doing it fully. The power of a non-negotiable is that it removes the debate. There is no decision fatigue. It simply becomes who you are. Imagine someone watching you without your knowledge, someone who sees every choice you make. Would they say you are a person of discipline? Would your actions match your intentions? Often, we act as if no one is watching, and therefore, nothing matters. But what if you live like every decision was a vote toward your future self? Because it is. Self-discipline, as Marcus Aurelius practiced it, was never about appearing strong to others. It was about internal sovereignty. He wrote in his journal, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Most people are slaves not to governments but to urges. To dopamine. To their phones. To their mood. But not you. Not anymore. And if you slip today, if you skip the habit, if you falter, do not confuse that with failure. The Stoics did not demand perfection. They demanded presence. Pay attention. Adjust. Begin again. One-off day does not destroy your path. But giving up the next day does. Discipline is not rigid. It is adaptable. Like a river, it flows around obstacles but never stops moving forward. That is who you are becoming, someone who does not stop, who does not make excuses, who chooses to keep flowing, no matter how many stones lie in the way. Subscribe for more truths that shift your perspective. Day 3 is the day of confrontation. By now the novelty has worn off. The adrenaline of change has started to fade, and all that remains is your habits, your mind, your resistance. This is where most people begin to question themselves. Why does this feel so hard? Why am I not seeing progress yet? But here is the truth that most will not tell you. The hardest part of building self-discipline is not starting. It is continuing when no one is clapping, when the results are invisible, when your old self begs you to stop. This is where you meet the wall, the invisible barrier between who you are and who you want to become. And that wall is made of nothing more than your old thoughts, your excuses, and your fear of discomfort. But do not be fooled. That discomfort is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that you are exactly where the transformation begins. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacle is not blocking your path. It is your path. The craving to quit, the desire to delay, the voice that tells you you can do this tomorrow, these are not your enemies. They are your training ground. Each time you face them undecked anyway, you are rewiring the deepest parts of your mind. Think of a blacksmith forging a blade. The metal is heated, beaten, and shaped again and again. It is not a smooth process. It is loud. It is violent. It is uncomfortable. But that is what makes the steel strong. You are the same. Your discipline is not being destroyed by hardship. It is being created by it. Day 3 is when you stop seeing discomfort as a threat. Instead, you welcome it like a teacher. Today, your task is to notice your inner dialogue when you face something difficult. Catch the moment when your mind whispers, skip it. You have done enough. It is okay to rest today, and in that moment breathe. Smile even. And choose the harder path not because you must, but because you can. Choose the cold shower. Choose the focused hour of deep work. Choose to hold your posture a little straighter, speak a little slower, say no when you want to say yes. Every one of these small decisions is a brick. Keep stacking them. Even when no one sees, especially when no one sees. There is a story of a samurai who trained alone in the mountains for years. No praise, no applause. Just discipline. Just refinement. And when he finally descended to the world again, his presence was undeniable. People felt something different in him. Not because of what he said, but because of who he had become. This is your path. Quiet. Invisible. Relentless. Discipline is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not crave validation. It is the quiet sharpening of the soul in solitude. And that is why so few maintain it, because they cannot bear the silence. But if you can, if you are willing to walk this path without needing applause, you will find something rare. You will find peace. Not comfort, but peace. The peace of knowing that your life is in your hands. The peace of no longer being a prisoner to impulse. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality," and that is true of discipline. We imagine the pain of doing the hard thing. We exaggerate the burden. But once you begin, it is rarely as painful as you thought. It is the resistance that hurts more than the action itself. So today, take the first step. Then another. Do not look too far ahead. Just move forward. And if you fall behind, if you miss a task, or fail to meet your standard, do not spiral. Discipline is not destroyed by one mistake. It is destroyed by the story you tell yourself about that mistake. If you say, "I failed, so what is the point?" If you're here right now, it means you're not waiting for life to happen. You're preparing for it. 2025 won't just be another year. It could be your breakthrough year, if you stay open to growth and committed to the work. Let this be your reminder you're not behind. You're just getting ready. But if you say, "I slipped, but I return now stronger," then even your setbacks become fuel. There is power in returning. There is power in resilience. There is power in showing up even when your past self would have quit. And that power is yours. Not in some distant future. Right now. From this point forward, every hard thing you do becomes a spiritual exercise. Every choice becomes a test of your sovereignty. And as you pass these tests, you begin to feel something shift inside you. A quiet confidence. A steady flame. A sense that no matter what life throws at you, you are no longer at its mercy. Because now you lead yourself. You do not wait to be led by motivation, by others, by chance. You have begun to cultivate the rarest form of freedom, self-minus command. If this message speaks to something in you, do not keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs the reminder. Test your emotions. Not your willpower. Not your plans. But your ability to stay calm in the face of craving, chaos, and discomfort. By now, the physical routine is becoming manageable. You know what you are supposed to do. But suddenly a deeper challenge appears, not outside of you, but within. You begin to feel restless, irritated, maybe even doubtful. You wonder, why am I doing all of this? Or is this even working? These are not logical thoughts. They are emotional storms, short, sharp, and powerful enough to knock you off track if you are not careful. This is where many people fall into the trap of emotional reasoning. They let a bad mood justify skipping a habit. They let a single frustration unravel days of progress. But emotions, while powerful, are not permanent. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you are not disturbed by things, but by your opinion of them. Remove the opinion, and you remove the disturbance. Emotional mastery is the next frontier of discipline. And it begins with one rule: you do not negotiate with your feelings. Think about a soldier in the middle of battle. He does not stop to ask, do I feel like fighting today? He acts because he must. Because the mission matters more than the mood. You are that soldier now. Not in a war of violence, but in a war against self-minus sabotage. And your battlefield is your own mind. So, what do you do when temptation shows up? When your phone buzzes? When the couch looks inviting? When someone offers you an easy way out? You pause. You breathe. You observe. And then you choose, not based on how you feel, but based on who you are becoming. That is the shift. That is the mark of someone with discipline. You are not reacting. You are responding. With intention. With clarity. With command. Today's exercise is simple but powerful. When an emotional impulse hits, whether it is anger, laziness, craving, or irritation, say to yourself, this is a feeling. It is not a fact. And it will pass. Then act in alignment with your values, not your feelings. Write it down if you must. Put it on your wall. Tattoo it on your mind. Because the person who can sit with emotion without being owned by it, that person is free. There is a metaphor often used by Stoics. Imagine yourself as a dog tied to a moving cart. The cart represents the path of reality, what is happening, what must be done. You have two choices: resist and be dragged, or walk along willingly. Either way, the cart moves forward. Discipline is choosing to walk willingly. It is choosing to align with what is necessary, not what is comfortable. Seneca warned, no man is fit to command another that cannot command himself, and this begins with mastering your inner storms. Most people live like boats without anchors, tossed by every wave of emotion, drifting from one mood to the next. But you are learning to be the anchor. To stay steady even when the sea is rough. Remember this: feelings are weather. Discipline is climate. You do not change who you are because it rains. You carry an umbrella, and you keep walking. Let today be the day you stop being ruled by momentary storms. Let today be the day you remind yourself, this mood is not me. This urge is not my command. I choose. If no one told you this before, hear it now: you are stronger than your cravings. You are wiser than your emotions. You are more resilient than your doubts. You just have to practice remembering it again and again, until it becomes instinct. Discipline does not mean you do not feel. It means you feel everything, but still act with integrity. That is true strength. That is Stoic mastery. And that is what will carry you through not just today, but the rest of your life. Day 5 is a threshold. You are no longer simply trying to be disciplined. You are starting to become disciplined. There is a difference. Trying is a posture of effort, often rooted in doubt. Becoming is a shift in identity. By now, you have faced resistance. You have felt your emotions flare and your cravings call. But more importantly, you have stayed in the fire. You have chosen again and again to act not from impulse, but from intention. And with each choice, something subtle is beginning to shift inside you. You are beginning to trust yourself. And that trust turned in the quiet moments when no one is watching is one of the most powerful forces in the human experience. Because once you trust yourself, deeply and consistently, your mind begins to rest. It stops questioning. It stops negotiating. It simply follows. Like a trained horse that once ran wild, your instincts begin to serve your purpose instead of pulling you away from it. But this is also where a new danger appears: ego. The moment you feel progress, the moment you sense control, your ego whispers, "You have done enough." It tempts you with pride. It tells you that you are different now, that you can relax, loosen your grip. And that is when old patterns sneak back in, quiet and cunning. This is why Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Because the moment you start telling yourself that you have become something, rather than proving it in your actions, you begin to rot from within. The Stoics did not aim to appear disciplined. They aimed to live as if every day were their last, with clarity and intention. So today's discipline is not about doing more. It is about doing deeper. Less noise. Less showing. More being. Do not confuse movement with progress. True discipline is not always visible. Sometimes it is saying no when everyone else says yes. Sometimes it is sitting in silence when your mind wants stimulation. Sometimes it is going to bed early, eating the same simple food, repeating the same small routine, not because it is exciting, but because it is right. You are not building a brand. You are building a life. Today, your task is to observe yourself as if you were watching a character in a film. Watch how you move, how you react, how you speak. Would you admire this character? Would you trust them? Would you believe they live with discipline and purpose? If not, adjust. Not with shame, but with precision. Imagine a sculptor refining a statue. The form is already emerging, but now come the delicate, subtle cuts. The refinements that transform something good into something excellent. That is where you are now, not forcing, not pushing, but refining. This is also a day to reflect on your environment. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Discipline will often isolate you. You will start to see that many people around you are ruled by their appetites, their distractions, their comforts. And when you begin to act differently, they may not understand. They may mock your routines. They may call you rigid or obsessed. Let them. Your path is not theirs. And you do not owe anyone an explanation for choosing growth over comfort. Build your environment to serve your highest self. Remove temptations. Simplify your tools. Surround yourself with silence or sound that lifts you. Design your day so that the right choice becomes the easy one, not by accident, but by intention. There is a hidden truth that only those deep into this path discover discipline over time becomes joy. Not the sugar minus high joy of indulgence, but the grounded, stable joy of self minus respect. Of knowing that you do what you said you would do. of waking up and looking in the mirror without shame, of living not in reaction, but in creation. This is not just about productivity. It is about peace. Because when you no longer fight with yourself, when your mind, body, and spirit are aligned, you begin to experience a calm that no amount of chaos can shake. That is the gift on the other side of 5 days of relentless discipline. And it is only just beginning. Let this be the day you stop measuring your success by how hard something feels, and start measuring it by how aligned it feels. Let discipline become less about pushing, and more about flowing in the direction of your values, your vision, your virtue. If you found strength in this message, pass it forward. Someone out there is one hard decision away from becoming who they were meant to be. Day 6 is quiet. Not because there is less going on, but because you are no longer chasing noise. You have said no to the easy comforts. You have turned down distractions. You have woken up early, repeated your small wins, stayed focused even when no one noticed. But now, the silence begins to speak. And what it says can be unsettling. You may begin to feel alone. Not physically. You might still be surrounded by people. But internally there is a shift, a growing distance between the version of you that was and the one you are becoming. You no longer resonate with certain habits, conversations, or even people. You find yourself less drawn to gossip, to mindless scrolling, to seeking validation. And though this is a sign of growth, it can feel like loss. This is the hidden cost of discipline. It asks for your solitude. Marcus Aurelius knew this deeply. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. When you choose discipline, you retreat inward. And in that retreat, you start to hear your true voice unfiltered by trends, untethered from expectations. It is in that stillness where the deepest transformation occurs. But it also requires a kind of courage few possess, the courage to walk alone. This is the part no one talks about. The day when progress starts to feel lonely. When you look around and realize that very few people are walking the path you are on. And even fewer understand why you are walking it. They see your discipline and think it is restriction. But you know the truth. What looks like sacrifice is actually liberation. You are no longer a slave to impulse. You are no longer swayed by the opinions of people who do not carry your burdens or understand your vision. You are no longer chasing the temporary comfort of being liked. You are building something eternal, inner respect. Today your task is to sit in that silence. Do not run from it. Do not try to fill it. Let it stretch out. Let it show you what still scares you, what still pulls at you, what you still crave but no longer need. Observe yourself with honesty, without judgment. And then ask, what kind of life do I want to live when no one is watching? Seneca once said, associate with people who are likely to improve you. But what if those people are not around you right now? What if for a time you are meant to be your own teacher, your own example, your own standard? This is where true discipline matures. Not in the presence of applause. Not when it is easy to be consistent. But when the world is indifferent and your only company is your own commitment. This is when your values stop being ideas and start becoming muscle memory. It is no longer something you remember to practice. It becomes who you are. And yes, there will be days like today when the silence feels like absence. But soon, it will start to feel like presence. You will begin to crave that stillness, not because you are hiding from the world. How many years have passed where you promised yourself change, but drifted back into comfort? This time, it's different because you're still here. You're listening, you're learning, and most importantly, you're not quitting. And that's what separates wishful thinking from real transformation. Clarity. purpose, depth. So do not fear the silence. Lean into it. Let it test your resolve. Let it refine your attention. Let it strip away the noise so that what remains is real. You are not missing out by choosing discipline. You are missing out by not choosing it sooner. There is a point in every transformation where the old life tries to call you back, not through direct confrontation, but through nostalgia. Memories of ease. Flashes of the past when you felt more free. But do not mistake comfort for freedom. True freedom is earned. Through repetition. Through self-denial. Through the courage to walk forward when every part of you wants to turn back. This path is narrow. It is often unlit. But it leads somewhere that the crowded roads never do. Mastery. If this message resonates, hold it close. And if you can, pass it on. Because someone out there is standing at the same quiet edge, waiting to see if anyone else chose the road less followed. Day 7 is not a finish line. It is not a reward. It is not the end of a challenge. It is a mirror. It shows you who you have been becoming slowly, silently, brick by brick. Not in a grand moment of achievement, but in the consistency of the small. The moment you said no to what tempted you. The time you woke up when your body said stay. The meal you prepared instead of ordering out. The time you sat in silence when distraction knocked. These moments added up. They always do. But today they begin to echo. There is a quiet shift happening now. Maybe you'll feel it in your posture. In the way your eyes move slower. In how you respond with more pause and less panic. Maybe it is in how your mornings begin with more clarity. Or in how your evenings carry less regret. Discipline has started to settle not just into your habits, but into your being. You are no longer trying. You are living. And yet this is the day when a deeper question arises: what now? You committed to 7 days. You followed through. You changed not just your actions, but your mindset. But now that you are standing here stronger, clearer, more in control, what do you do with it? The Stoics would say you begin again. Because discipline is not an event. It is not something you graduate from. It is not a goal to reach. It is a practice. A posture. A way of walking through the world that does not depend on motivation or mood, but on values and virtue. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. You are no longer just reacting to life. You are shaping it. With every choice. With every repeated behavior. With every moment of awareness, you are casting votes for the kind of person you are becoming. Today is a reckoning not of punishment, but of potential. Because now you see that you never needed motivation. You needed momentum. And you have it. But momentum must be protected. Because the world does not stop tempting you. Your old habits do not vanish. Your mind will still whisper its old excuses in a new voice. Just this once it will say, you deserve a break, but now you know better. You know the cost of one small compromise. Not because it ruins everything, but because it sends a message to yourself, maybe I am not who I said I was. And that is the real battle now, not discipline itself, but the identity underneath it. So today, your task is different. It is not to perform. It is not to push. It is to claim. Claim this new self. Not with pride. Not with arrogance. But with humility and reverence. Say to yourself, I am the kind of person who does hard things. I am the kind of person who keeps their word. I am the kind of person who lives with discipline not because it is easy, but because it is right. Then reinforce it. In silence. In solitude. In simplicity. Wake up tomorrow and do the same routines. But not because you have to. Because you want to. Because you have seen what happens when you live by design, not default. Because you have felt the inner stillness that comes when your life aligns with your values. There is something sacred about self-minus discipline that few understand. It is not about control for control's sake. It is about freedom, the kind that cannot be taken from you because it is built inside of you. It is the kind of freedom Marcus Aurelius found in his journals while leading an empire. The kind Seneca taught while navigating the chaos of political life. The kind Epictetus embodied as a slave who became a philosopher. You now carry that same fire. And that fire will not always roar. Most days it will flicker gently. But it will be there. In your choices. In your pauses. In your refusal to quit when everything says stop. From this point forward, you will not measure your life by outcomes alone. You will measure it by your effort, your attention, your integrity. That is how disciplined people think. That is how disciplined people live. So what happens after day 7? You repeat it. You refine it. You recome it. And then one day, someone will ask you, how did you become so consistent? So focused? So calm? And you will smile not because it was easy, but because you remember the days it was not. You remember choosing discipline when no one noticed. When your progress was invisible. When your only reward was the quiet knowing that you had not betrayed yourself. And maybe you will not explain all of it. Maybe you will just say, it started with a choice. And I made that choice again. And again. And again. If this journey lit a spark inside you, pass it on. Someone you know is waiting for proof that discipline is possible. Be that proof. After 7 days of consistent effort, clarity, and quiet strength, most people think the work is done. They celebrate. They let go. They fall back. Not because they failed, but because they misunderstood what they were building. They saw discipline as a challenge with a finish line. But now you know it is not a challenge. It is a foundation. A way of being. Day 8 is not a part of the original plan. It is the beginning of a life beyond the plan. Now that you have practiced control, now that you have earned your own respect, a new responsibility emerges, the responsibility to protect what you have built. Because here is a hidden truth: the higher you rise in discipline, the more subtle the threats become. It is no longer the obvious temptations that pull you off track. It is the soft ones. The justified ones. I worked hard, I deserve this. I need to rest. Just one day off. And that is when your old self, quiet for a week, begins to wake up. So, let us talk about rest. Not the kind sold in ads. Not the kind that numbs you with comfort. Real rest. Rest with integrity. The kind that restores, not regresses. Rest that makes you stronger. Epictetus said, no great thing is created suddenly. That includes the sustainable version of you. Discipline is not about grind until burnout. It is about rhythm. Tension and release. Action and recovery. But the key is this: even your rest must be intentional. If your break costs you the identity you are trying to build, it is not rest. It is sabotage. So here is what discipline looks like after the first storm has passed boundaries. You set systems that carry you when your energy dips. You build buffers around your triggers. You stop relying on willpower and start living by structure. And most of all, you remind yourself every single day who you are becoming. Not just when it is hard, but especially when it feels easy. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." That truth becomes more visible once you taste the power of alignment. You start to see how many hours you used to lose to things that never gave anything back. And now you are less willing to give your time away so cheaply. But this awareness brings another test. How do you stay disciplined when no external structure is forcing you to? How do you remain consistent when no one is watching, when there is no end date, no applause, no accountability but your own conscience? The answer lies in your self-minus concept. You no longer ask, "Can I do this?" You ask, "Is this what the person I am becoming would do?" That one shift changes everything. Because now every decision is not about pain or pleasure, it is about alignment. It is not about forcing discipline. It is about reinforcing identity. And here is the paradox: the more disciplined you become, the more free you feel. That is what most people never understand. They think freedom is doing what you want when you want. But that kind of freedom often leads to enslavement by cravings, moods, distractions. The Stoics knew this. Real freedom is doing what you ought to do, even when you do not feel like it. Especially then. So do not fear repetition. Do not fear the boredom of routine. That boredom is the soil where greatness grows. Olympic athletes rehearse the same movements for years. Masters of any craft embrace the mundane. Because they are not looking for stimulation. They are looking for strength. And strength is forged in the furnace of consistency. So what do you do on day 8 and beyond? You do what works. You do what aligns. You do what sustains your momentum. You keep the promises that no one else knows you made. And when you fall, which you will, you do not spiral. You reflect. You adjust. You recommit. That is how a disciplined person thinks. Not in absolutes, but in patterns. Not in perfect streaks, but in resilient returns. You are not fragile anymore. You are not built on motivation. You are built on principles. On practice. On perspective. That is what day 8 teaches you. That this is not just a path you walk. It is a path you pave. And the further you go, the more others will begin to follow. They will ask you how you became so focused, so consistent, so calm under pressure. And you may tell them. Or maybe you will just keep walking quietly, clearly, and without the need for validation. Because once you taste the stillness that comes from internal order, no external chaos can shake you. If this message reminded you of the path you are on, pass it on. Someone out there is waking up today, wondering if self-minus discipline is still possible. Show them that it is. By this point, discipline is no longer an idea you chase. It is a presence you carry. But there is a strange tension that comes with sustained growth, the realization that the world around you has not changed, even though you have. You begin to see things more clearly: how often people speak without thinking, how easily they seek comfort, how quick they are to quit when things get difficult. And yet you must walk among them not with judgment, but with understanding. Because you were once there too. Discipline does not make you better than anyone. It makes you more responsible for who you are. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most powerful man of his time, reminded himself daily to stay humble. In his journal, he wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. This is the posture of real strength, not arrogance, but clarity. Not dominance, but direction. You no longer need to win every argument, prove your worth, or defend your habits. Your life speaks for itself. But here is a subtle trap: when discipline becomes consistent, the ego wants to take credit. It starts to whisper, "Look at how far you have come. Look how strong you are now." And slowly, without noticing, you begin to protect an image rather than refine the substance. You start doing things for perception instead of principle. This is where you must return to the root. Remember why you started. It was not to impress anyone. It was not for metrics, likes, compliments, or followers. It was because something inside you knew that you were meant for more than passive existence. Something inside you was tired of drifting. And now that you are grounded, do not forget the pain that brought you here. Stoicism teaches us to live according to nature. And nature is not chaotic indulgence, it is order, rhythm, balance. A tree does not bloom every day. A mountain does not shout for attention. Water flows with gravity. And you now live in harmony with your nature. That means returning to simplicity. There is a version of you in 2025 that looks back at this moment and smiles. Because this is when it started, when you chose discipline over distraction, purpose over pressure. Keep listening. You are not just passing time, you are reshaping your future with every word. Refining your systems. Letting go of habits that once served a purpose but are now just noise. As Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." What are you still craving that you no longer need? Today is about subtraction. It is about removing not just distractions, but identities that no longer align. You may have started this journey with the label of self-improver, high-performer, disciplined achiever. But now, you begin to see the danger in these titles. Because they become prisons. They create pressure to perform rather than freedom to be. Let go. Let discipline become quiet again. Let it return to its essence, choosing the hard thing because it is right, not because it is visible. Choosing virtue over validation. Choosing presence over performance. And in this stillness, ask yourself, if I had no one to impress, what would I still choose to do every day? That is your real discipline. The kind that survives isolation, failure, obscurity. The philosopher Mus Rufus said, "The person who has practiced philosophy is his own best friend." Self-discipline practiced well becomes a form of friendship with yourself. You begin to trust your word. You begin to rely on your routines. You begin to enjoy your own company, not because it is perfect, but because it is honest. And there is a special peace that comes from that honesty. You no longer waste time pretending. You no longer seek shortcuts. You no longer over-explain your choices. Instead, you show up. You execute. You adjust. You rest. You repeat. You live the kind of life that builds itself, brick by brick, moment by moment, without needing the world's permission. But do not be fooled, this does not mean your work is done. In fact, this is where it deepens. Because discipline, once stable, demands stewardship. You are now responsible not only for staying strong, but for staying soft, for keeping your principles without growing cold. For staying committed without becoming rigid. For keeping standards high, but your heart higher. It is easy to become a machine. To turn discipline into a wall that keeps people out. But that is not mastery. That is fear in disguise. True mastery is flexible. It bends but does not break. It adapts without losing its root. It knows when to push and when to pause. It knows that the goal is not control, but coherence, where your inner values match your outer actions so closely, there is no gap left for shame to crawl in. Today, let your discipline be human. Let it breathe. Let it listen. Let it forgive. You will have days when you stumble. Days when the routine feels stale. Days when the fire dims. And on those days, you will be tempted to either quit or punish yourself. Do neither. Instead, return to center. Return to silence. Return to the small act that grounds you. Even if all you do is drink water, stretch your back, take 3 deep breaths, and write 1 sentence, do it with intention. That is enough. That is proof that the foundation still holds. Because that is all discipline ever was, not perfection, but presence. If these words brought you clarity, share them. Someone near you is seeking not inspiration but instruction. Show them how a quiet life, lived in truth and discipline, is the most powerful force of all. By now, discipline is no longer confined to routines. It has begun to shape how you think, how you speak, how you treat others. It has moved beyond the early morning alarm or the clean meal or the focused hour of work. It now shows up in your presence, in your stillness, in the calm behind your eyes. This is where the true nature of self-discipline reveals itself, not as punishment but as love. Most people misunderstand that. They think self-discipline is harsh. That it is about denial, about saying no, about missing out. But what if the opposite is true? What if self-discipline is the purest form of self-respect? Of self-honor? Of saying I care enough about who I am becoming that I will not betray myself in the name of comfort. Because here is what you start to notice: the more disciplined you become, the more gentle you become. Not weaker but softer in spirit. Less reactive. Less defensive. More able to listen without interrupting. More willing to hold space without needing to fill it. That is the paradox of discipline. It hardens your will, but softens your heart. Seneca wrote, "As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters." A good life is not measured in achievements but in alignment. And discipline creates that alignment. You start saying no to things not because they are evil, but because they are not for you. You stop chasing everything. You begin choosing intentionally. And in doing so, your life becomes lighter. Clearer. But the world does not make this easy. It feeds you distraction. It profits off your attention. Every scroll, every comparison, every false urgency is designed to pull you away from yourself. That is why self-discipline today is not just a practice, it is a rebellion. You are not just reclaiming your time. You are reclaiming your mind. You are saying no to the anxiety that comes from living through the lens of others. You are stepping back from the game of comparison. You are realizing that just because something is popular, praised, or profitable does not mean it is right for you. And once you stop trying to keep up, you start catching up with yourself. This is where discipline begins to reshape your relationships. You start listening deeper. You stop speaking from impulse. You no longer need to win arguments because you are no longer ruled by ego. You set boundaries not as walls, but as windows that filter what comes in. You stop performing. You start connecting. You realize that the greatest gift you can offer someone is not your time, your money, or your effort. It is your clarity. Because when you are grounded, you lift others without trying. When you live from your values, you give people permission to do the same. Self-discipline becomes a quiet example. People start to notice not because you tell them, but because you move differently. You do not chase drama. You do not react to chaos. You are not perfect, but you are present. You are not loud, but you are rooted. And that creates a different kind of energy, an energy that calms the room instead of feeding its noise. And then slowly you begin to apply discipline to the hardest domain of all, your inner voice. You stop speaking to yourself like a critic. You stop rehearsing your mistakes. You start offering yourself the same grace you once reserved for others. Not because you are lowering your standards, but because you understand now growth is not linear, and self-minus respect does not require perfection. Discipline is not about beating yourself into shape. It is about returning to yourself when you forget. So today, your task is simple: listen. Listen to how you speak to yourself when you miss a step. Notice the tone, the judgment, the shame. Then ask, would I speak to a friend like this? If not, adjust. Choose language that reinforces your strength, not your scars. Remember, you are not just training your behavior. You are training your narrative. And over time, that narrative becomes identity. You stop calling yourself inconsistent. You stop repeating old stories. You start building a new one, sentence by sentence, action by action. And this time, the main character is not someone who is trying to change. It is someone who already has. The greatest proof of discipline is not how hard you work, it is how deeply you live. How present you are with your loved ones. How at peace you are with your past. How intentional you are with your future. And most importantly, how you carry yourself when no one is watching. If this spoke to your deeper self, let it ripple. Share it with someone who believes discipline has to hurt. Show them it can heal. By now, discipline is no longer something you do. It is something you are. It flows through your choices, your posture, the way you carry yourself in silence. It no longer needs to be announced. It no longer needs to be forced. It has become your second nature. But with that quiet mastery comes a new kind of test, subtle, psychological, invisible to most. And it is this: can you stay disciplined when the world rewards distraction? Because the higher you rise in clarity, the more noise surrounds you. Suddenly, people begin to notice. They ask how you stay consistent. They admire your focus. They comment on your progress. And slowly, the temptation creeps in, not to indulge in comfort, but to indulge in image. To be seen as disciplined, rather than to remain disciplined. To start performing discipline for others instead of practicing it for yourself. This is where many lose their way, not from weakness, but from external validation. Marcus Aurelius warned against this trap in his Meditations: do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others. It is not the man who criticizes or praises you who matters, but your own character. What makes you strong is not how others see your discipline. It is how deeply you will live it when no one else is watching. And here is the paradox: the more grounded you are, the less praise moves you. Because you are no longer doing it for applause. You are doing it because it is who you are. You wake up early not because it looks good on a story, but because it gives you stillness. You eat clean, not because it is trendy, but because it fuels your mind. You say no to temptation, not to impress, but to preserve your peace. This is where discipline becomes a way of life. A personal code. A quiet vow you keep with yourself. But even then, even with all the habits, rituals, clarity, you will fall. You will have a day when you oversleep. A moment when you snap. A week when you fall out of rhythm. And when that happens, the voice of your old self returns. Not loud. Not angry. Just familiar. It says, see, you have not changed. You are back where you started. What was the point? This is your crucible. Not because you fell, but because of how you rise. Epictetus taught it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You were never meant to be flawless. You are meant to be faithful to your process, your path, your principles. And when you fall, the only thing that matters is the next choice. Will you spiral into shame? Or will you return with humility, with softness, with resolve? Because make no mistake, the world is watching how you respond. But more importantly, your own soul is watching. And each response becomes a signal: I give up or I get up. Today your practice is simple but sacred. Return. Return to your breath. Return to your system. Return to your values. You do not need to restart the journey. You just need to take the next step in the right direction. That is enough. That is everything. And here is something even fewer talk about: discipline is not just for the hard days. It is for the easy ones. When things are going well, when the money flows, when the praise comes, when the body is strong and the mind is clear, that is when discipline must anchor you even more. Because comfort makes you soft. Success makes you sloppy. Praise makes you passive. Unless you train your mind to resist the lull of ease. Seneca wrote, "It is not that the path is difficult. It is that we are undisciplined, and what creates discipline in good times is vision. You must know what you are building, not just avoiding. You must know what kind of father, partner, leader, or human you want to become. Because if you do not define your future self, the world will define it for you. Let your actions today not just protect you from the past, but prepare you for the person you are becoming. Let every habit be a vote. Let every decision cast a shadow into tomorrow. And let your character, not your emotions, lead. Because the truth is, we do not rise to the level of our dreams. We fall to the level of our systems. And those systems, those small, quiet disciplines, are now your armor. Not armor that hardens you. Armor that frees you. Armor that lets you walk through temptation, distraction, pressure, and praise without losing your center. This is the life you will choose. Because it is not loud. It is not glamorous. It requires integrity without recognition. Courage without certainty. Repetition without applause. But it is the only life that creates true freedom. And when people ask you years from now how you became this version of yourself, you will not talk about hacks or hustle. You will speak about small decisions made consistently. About the morning you got up when it was hard. About the boundary you kept when no one noticed. About the promise you kept to yourself quietly again and again and again. If these words reminded you of your path, send them to someone who has not yet heard their own voice through the noise. There is a kind of stillness that comes after a long journey. Not the stillness of exhaustion. The stillness of knowing. You have walked through 7 days, each filled with discomfort, discipline, resistance, and return. You have risen earlier. You have said no more often. You have met your cravings with quiet command. And now you stand here more than a week older, but years wiser. Because you have not just built habits. You have built yourself. That is the part no one can see from the outside. The internal scaffolding. The quiet rewiring. The voice that once doubted you, now hesitating before its peaks. The posture of your shoulders, just a little higher. The way you breathe before you speak. The way you now choose your response rather than surrendering it. Self-minus discipline has become more than a practice. It has become a lens. A way of seeing the world. A way of protecting your time, your peace, your energy, and your integrity. It is no longer something you have to try. It is something you get to live. But now as the noise fades, a deeper truth arrives. This was never about 7 days. This was about choosing who you want to be for the rest of your life. Because the journey never ends. Not for those who seek mastery. there is always another layer to shed. Another blind spot to confront. Another moment to return to alignment. And that is the beauty of it. There is no final version of you. Only more honest ones. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That is the essence of discipline. To stop waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect motivation, the perfect support. To simply begin. To simply be. And now that you have begun, the real work starts not in grand gestures, but in small faithfulness. You will wake up tomorrow without a challenge. Without a checklist. Without an external reason to stay consistent. But you will do it anyway. Because you have seen the power of what happens when you do. You have felt the pride, not ego, but earned self-respect that comes from keeping your word. You have tasted the peace of knowing you are not ruled by mood, but guided by values. That is the foundation of a good life. Not a life without difficulty, but a life without self-betrayal. Not a life without chaos, but a life built on inner order. Not a life without noise, but one that can return to silence when needed. You now understand what few ever do, that self-discipline is not the enemy of freedom. It is its birthplace. And yet, you must stay vigilant. Because the world will not change for you. It will still offer shortcuts. It will still reward image over integrity. It will still tell you to speed up when your soul needs to slow down. And in those moments, you will be tempted not by failure, but by forgetfulness. Do not forget. Do not forget how it felt to be clear. Do not forget what it cost to be consistent. Do not forget the power of saying no when everything inside you wanted to say yes. You are no longer asleep in your own life. Stay awake. And remember, this journey was never just about you. Your discipline, your quiet excellence, your inner alignment is not just for your benefit. It is a gift to the people around you. It lifts your relationships. It sharpens your work. It calms your home. It inspires your children. It creates a ripple that touches lives you may never even meet. Because when one person becomes free from impulse, they free everyone near them from chaos. So, what now? You keep going. You refine the path. You rest when needed, but never retreat. You teach what you have lived, not with your words, but with your presence. You become the example the world is desperate for, even if it does not know how to ask for it. You lead quietly. You serve fully. You return daily. And when life gets loud again, when you fall out of rhythm, when your mind starts to pull you back, pause. Breathe. Close your eyes. And remember this week. Remember the early mornings. The disciplined refusals. The steady steps. The quiet victories. The realignment. Because now, no matter what happens, you carry proof. Proof that you are not fragile. Proof that you can begin again at any moment. Proof that self-discipline is not a destination. It is your home. If this journey meant something to you, do not keep it to yourself. Share it. Live it. Let your life become a quiet revolution. Not through force. Not through noise. But through discipline. Through presence. Through peace. If this message stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Write one thing down that you'll start doing this week. 2025 doesn't magically change anything you do. And your future begins the moment you decide to move, even just a little.